She, remember when I showed you a video of my granddaughter speaking in fluent Mandarin and you said her eyesight is on the future? At that moment, I realized maybe you were talking about a century of Chinese prosperity. I did not understand it. She, please call me. Remember the good times we had together.
Bye, everybody.
I need you to stop a picture. Mr. President. Mr. President. I love you. We love you.
I think they're going very well. We're going to make a lot of money. We're already at 25% on cars and aluminum and steel, taking in a lot of money, more money than this country's seen. And that's just the beginning. I don't know yet. We're going to be briefed on it right now. In fact, I'm going to the Oval Office. Say it? Would you like to go? Well, I don't know. I just have to look at the timing. We just lowered the flags throughout the country. It's part of Russia. So I will be giving you a full detail over the next 3 days. But we had very good meetings on Ukraine, Russia. We had very good meetings actually on Iran too. We'll see how that works out. Yeah. Next step is we need a little time, but we had very good meetings on Iran. We had very good, and the tariffs are going very well, as you know. Everybody.
It's really funny because the Japanese envoys that came in to do trade talks returned back to Japan and said in the conversation that took place, where basically they came in and they said, what are your demands? And apparently the Trump administration had no coherent demand to make of the Japanese the Japanese envoys that came in. So they just left with no deal being made. Breaking. Japanese negotiators are complaining that the problem with the trade negotiations with the White House, what's delaying concrete progress and a real deal, is that U.S. keeps changing its ask in terms of exactly what it wants, said one financial CEO who speaks regularly to country officials. Maybe it's a negotiation tactic. But the lack of publicly announced deal progress is depressing the dollar, spiking bond yields, and leading to a flight to quality, to gold, and now Bitcoin developing. Art of the deal, baby. Japan won't keep conceding to U.S. demands to reach a deal over tariffs, Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba says. Now understand something. This is the Japanese Prime Minister. This country, we wrote the Constitution of. This country that has been basically led by one singular party of our choosing in perpetuity post-World War II. Like, these guys aren't just allies. This is a vassal state. And you have the vassal state leadership saying, we can't do anything. Like, what do you expect of us? You don't have a good, you don't even have any like normal expectations. We don't even know what to expect. It's crazy. Have you seen the domestic hotel price for the summer? Google is showing like 70% off rack rates compared to deep compared to last summer. What do you mean? And this is Japan, for the record. This is Japan. This is supposed to be the easiest deal. This is a country whose economy we single-handedly crippled in the 90s because they listened to our demands. The problem here, according to the veteran diplomat that spoke on these matters, is that they have not made any asks to begin with. Here it is.
We have the White House claims that there are direct talks going on somehow with the Chinese. I don't believe it. I think what is happening is what I described earlier. The Chinese are maintaining contact with us, routine contact. There is no negotiation going on. The Japanese have just been in Washington, and their experience apparently was they went to talk to the American leadership on this matter, and the American leadership said, "What are you offering?" And the Japanese said, "Well, what is it that you want?" And the Americans could not explain what they wanted. This is a cockamamie approach to negotiation. And I think the Chinese, having observed the United States break virtually every agreement it has agreed to in recent years, including the replacement for NAFTA with proposed tariffs on Canada and Mexico, that was negotiated by Mr. Trump in his first term. And yet he felt free to abandon it and repudiate it. What's the incentive to negotiate with the United States when the United States has no stated objectives that make sense and no record of compliance with its own agreements? So I don't think there is. I think the Chinese have decided they will wait us out and see how Americans like Walmart and Amazon denude of products. 60% of Walmart's products originate in China. They're all tariffed.
Excellent 5D chess move, sir. Thank you very much. You've did it again, sir. You've done it again. Explain your DPRK take because people are eating for it. What? Eating for it? What do you mean? Oh, do you mean people are mad at me for once again misunderstanding something that I laid out fairly clearly? Mad at me for an accurate reflection of historical fact? Oh, how shocking. I saw this tweet go viral on the timeline last night, and I quote retweeted it. I'm actually so tired of white people, this person says. Why? Because there's this TikTok. North Korea is actually a beautiful socialist country with free housing and healthcare that's been battling U.S. imperialism for decades and not the horrible dictatorship the West has told you it is. Now, do I agree with this statement? No, I don't agree with this statement, as I've said time and time again. Having said that, however, here was my statement on it. Ironic since DPRK is, as a matter of historical fact, a direct victim of U.S. imperialism. So while this person has a rose-colored view in terms of, being a beautiful socialist country with free housing and healthcare and, all this stuff, she is still closer to reality on that acknowledgement alone than every single American who thinks they pull trains and eat rat shit for breakfast. There is literally nothing wrong with this statement. There's nothing wrong with this statement. The statement is, while she is wrong on how she views the living conditions, living standards, or the current governance of North Korea, and has this rose-colored view of what it's like to exist within the DPRK, she's right on one fundamental here, and that is the historic events that unfolded in the Korean War. And therefore, she's closer to the truth, at least on that fundamental alone, than the average American who knows nothing. Rosy take on DPRK, but pretending like DPRK and ROK to an extent, not to an extent, Republic of Korea as well. Korea, across the board, are victims of U.S. empire. In two different outcomes as a result of how we treated them is objectively factual. My response to these morons is always to remember they're internet idiots, and my information is from scholars in Korea. Yeah. I said, I'm not saying shit is sweet in Pyongyang, but let's not forget, if it wasn't America doing it, the bombing campaign in the forgotten war would likely amount to genocide. Then I said, listen to Blowback Season 3. Notice how you never explain why in cases like this. Just saying things doesn't make them true Lamau. Please open a book. Please, for the love of Christ and all things holy, in honor of the late, great Pope Francis, open a goddamn book for once. Okay? It's so sad. Like, like there's two ways to go about it. Where you can say what America did had to be done, and that it was, you say it's imperialism, I say it's liberation, right? But you can't deny the truth. You either look to America's actions in Korea as wrong or right. But what a lot of these liberals do is refuse to look to America's actions in Korea at all. She's not propagandized, though. Yeah, people get publicly executed in North Korea for listening to music from another country. If you genuinely believe that North Korea kills anyone who listens to music, you're really, really bad at avoiding propaganda. I mean, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't fucking matter. Like, this is what I mean. This is the point. The point is, like, you can say anything and everything you want. You can say anything and everything you want about North Korea, and people will believe it. Bro, up until, like, literally 2 years ago, you could say anything and everything you want about China and people would believe it, despite the fact that Chinese people freely travel to this country. What are we talking about? And they have internet. There are still plenty of people in America that think like, oh, they're eating rat shit in China too. What's really annoying about all this, is the anti-intellectual thought demonstrated by liberals, who also ironically see themselves as totally above the barbaric nature of conservatives. But when it comes to American chauvinism, when it comes to Western chauvinism, when it comes to American empire, they basically engage in the same exact thought terminating cycles, these thought terminating cliches. It's so frustrating. They'll go, oh, dude, you said that? You're tanky. You must love DPRK. You're saying DPRK is awesome. It's the best place on the planet. That's what you're saying. No, that's not what I'm saying. Like, I'm sorry, guys, but if you have, due to prior social conditioning, some existing resistance to learning about history, right? That's one thing. But if your immediate reaction is to go on the defense, misunderstand my point, and then claim that I am like across the board saying that the Democratic People's Republic of Korea is like this moral beacon and a socialist utopia, you are no different than an anti-vaxxer conservative. It's very annoying. I have a relatively nuanced perspective on this matter that pisses off a lot of Marxist-Leninists, as a matter of fact. They'll say, no, you're wrong. They are eating burger every meal. Fuck you. It makes me so mad. Like, the entire counter argument to anything I have to say about the evolution of Hamas and militant resistance against the increasing violent control that Israel has had over and the subjugation that Israel has had over Palestinian populations, everyone immediately goes, oh, you love terrorism. You love terrorism. The reason why I have to always say, like, analysis does not mean justification or analysis does not mean defense is for this reason. Like, I will explain to you historically relevant points, and some people will literally go, nah, that means you are a champion. You want to do October 7th every day. Like, it's so stupid. It's so incredibly anti-intellectual thought. No intellectual curiosity whatsoever. Very frustrating. Go live there. I don't even understand what point you're trying to make. North Korea isn't a hellhole with many human rights violations and extreme poverty. No, the point I'm making is, again, very clear. On that acknowledgement alone, the acknowledgement that Korea as a nation is a direct victim of first Japanese colonialism and then American empire, American imperialism, is not a controversial take. It's not. It's just a direct explanation of things that happened. You might look at that and say, I disagree because I think it was for the greater good. I don't think that. You might. But to deny that there was no American imperialism is to deny reality. It's so crazy. How is this any different than a high school teacher explaining like the basics of slavery and how the founding fathers had slaves, and then a parent hearing about that and getting mad and being like, how dare you bring that up? How dare you bring up that our founding fathers had slaves? There was great debate on the subject matter. They're infallible beacons of good and morality. It's like, it's no different than people doing the anti-CRT shit at parent-teachers conferences. You should know better and what hills are worth dying on and not. You should know that normal people will never be broken through to this thinking, even if it's true, it's not worth it, in my opinion. Man, I don't give a fuck. Okay, let's say anti-vaxxer sentiment reaches the same level of mania, which can very likely happen in this country, especially with RFK Jr. now at the head of HHS. Do you think I should just drop the ball on that entirely because Americans are too stupid to recognize that vaccines are good? Or do you think I should still say the truth regardless? Everything that I've done in my political commentary career is that. You're saying sometimes it's okay to just not talk about the truth because people are too conditioned to refuse to understand what you're saying. That is crazy. Considering my worldview and stances, especially living in the United States of America as someone who is firmly committed to anti-imperialist thought, virtually every single thing that I have espoused, every single thing that I've advocated for the past decade, things that you now understand have become a part of popular sentiment. Israel-Palestine comes to mind. Greatest example that I could use here. If I had stopped somewhere along the way, and if others had stopped somewhere along the way, and refuse to say the truth, you would not have the sea change that you're experiencing currently on this matter. Why would I just give up? Plenty of Americans refuse to reckon with the damaging nature of white supremacy and how important of a principle that is played in the development, how important a principle that has played in the development
any headway
of the United States of America. Should I stop talking about that? Do you know the average person's perspective is incredibly transphobic? Should I stop talking about trans people? Should I stop trying to defend trans people and trans existence and try to actively educate people on and move them away from transphobic perspectives that they've maintained their whole lives? You can say this exact same thing, not just on North Korea, but on virtually everything I talk about. This is very important. I stand by my principles and I will continue to do so. This stubbornness is, I think, what makes me as successful as I have been so far. How can you claim to be anti-imperialist while supporting Houthis, Hezbollah, and Hamas? Are you just anti-Western imperialism? Brother, please understand the basic definition of imperialism. If you think that the Houthis, Hezbollah, and Hamas are doing imperialism, W-bait chat. Okay, oh my God. Good job, dude. They're not. They are a militant resistance group against settler colonialism, in this circumstance, Israel, and American imperialism. Okay, it's not a good bait. Hermit Hwarang says, I think it's insane for a country that killed 3 to 5 million Korean people to constantly use North Korea as a reference for a nightmare dystopia to describe their own society, which in actuality has been a real nightmare dystopian authoritarian mass slaughter paragon all along. U.S. soldiers literally put fire hoses inside of Korean women and turned on the water until their body exploded. I don't know about that part. Army doctors practice excessive amputations on thousands of Korean and Chinese POWs out of pure sadism. The baseline U.S. mentality towards Koreans is basically KKK shit. That last part I do agree with. They do. They did. The entire, like, it actually kind of gets lost in the sauce. And this is not like rad lib shit. Like, the American military's attitude towards historically towards what they've done in the Pacific campaigns have been insane. Like, actually, it's so racist. They use the same slur across the board, all the way from the Philippines, all the way to the Korean War and then Vietnam. Like, it's across the board. They even use the same slur, the G word. Yeah, this is actually a new. South Korea Commission probes civilian massacres by U.S. in Korean War. This is from 2008, but this is still an ongoing issue. I remember reading something about this recently, a couple months ago, about, I think it was Jeju. Jeju Island. There's still so much. There's still so much that the South Korean government hides about its own history and about how with American backing, they put down uprisings, like populist uprisings that were taking place in South Korea, in the Republic of Korea, and how much people had what kind of sentiment, what kind of popular sentiment was being expressed by South Koreans at the time that had to be violently squashed with insane extrajudicial murder. Gwangju uprising and Jeju uprising, yeah. A fascist, Syngman Rhee, his government carried out brutal campaigns against suspected communist sympathizers, leaving at least 100,000 people dead. In Daejeon, about 7,000 South Koreans are believed to have been shot by their own military and police and then dumped in the mass graves. This is some of the stuff that I talked about here. I talked about when covering the long history of Koreans rising up. If you recall, when the Korean population stormed the streets and stopped, like literally overthrew a attempt at a coup and an implementation of martial law by just straight up protesting. At the time, I explained to you that like South Koreans have had a long history of doing this. All this happened less than a century ago. For far too many people in the government, the military, and all the apparatuses of the state, it is their literal grandparents who ordered, executed, and then covered up these crimes. There's a direct line from the Korean War to the attacks on civil liberties under Trump. Executive authority expanded enormously during the Korean War. The first overseas U.S. police action, which justified later permanent wars waged by POTUS without congressional approval. Korean War censorship of the U.S. press was extensive. This is also a huge issue, yeah. After 1951, there was basically no independent U.S. journalism permitted. McCarthyism in the early 50s was fueled by the bloodlust of the war and the political fallout of the Chinese Revolution in Washington. It's true today with Palestine. It was true back then. Fascism festers in the colonies and then returns to the imperial core. The chauvinism and racism of liberals is just fodder for that fascism to thrive. Eric, friend of the show, Eric Hovagim says, I wonder if the side who used Unit 731 lead scientists to drop the bubonic plague on civilians and led the biological warfare efforts in the Korean War was actually the good guys. Still trying to figure this out. There's a lot of crazy stuff that happened in the Korean War, and I highly recommend Blowback Season 3 for this reason. They go into great detail about some of the atrocities, some of the defenses, Chinese involvement, of course. But ultimately, if you were to say, oh, was there any sort of imperialist interest by the United States of America in the aftermath of World War II to dominate Korean politics and to make sure that there was a bulwark against the growth of Soviet-style socialism in the region, and therefore they had to do whatever they had to do, which was to basically adopt the previous colonial framework that the Japanese had left behind and use that with the creation of a puppet state that was incredibly violent to those who actually wanted to have a united singular Korea that was socialist, by the way, because the uprisings that I'm talking about are all against the Republic of Korea, against the initial puppet state that was presented, the puppet state that was created, and they brutally murdered all of those people. And the American government stood idly by and in many instances offered logistical support, and this is before the Korean War. Offered targets, logistical support. It was ridiculous. Yeah. And once again, as is the case in Indonesia, everywhere that American empire touches, all of the fascist puppets that we place into positions of power, they don't just kill the socialists. They don't just kill the card-carrying socialists, as a matter of fact. It always extends far beyond that. Just like Donald Trump's actions are not going to stop with anti-Israel sentiment. And you are a moron if you think that that is where it's going to end. If you think that you should be comfortable in this very moment, because Trump is simply going after the anti-Israel people and nothing else. And I don't really care about Israel like that. You are dumb. You are oblivious. You are naive. They killed anyone and everyone that exhibited dissent, all the way down to liberals.
Everybody wants to negotiate.
Anyway, and here we are. Look at this belligerent empire.
He's a very good man who loved the world, and he especially loved people that were having a hard time, and that's good with me.
So he preached tolerance for migrants. He preached tolerance for
Yes, he did. Yeah, he did. Yeah, I do. I really do. I mean, I hear they're doing that whole thing again. Here we go again. Just a waste of time. He is doing a great job.
Why do you still have confidence?
Because he's doing a great job. Thanks, Ask the Houthis how he's doing.
There's a hearing today on the Alien Enemies Act in the DC District Court. Your thoughts on that, Mr. President?
Well,
He's like, ask the Houthis how he's doing. No, literally, because he texted them. He's like, ask the Houthis. They know. He's been texting them every day. I keep telling him, Pete, don't do it. Don't text the Houthis. What are you going to do? He loves to set up signal chats and text everybody. That's my Pete.
we were elected to clean up the mess of this country. And we had millions and millions of people come in who are criminals, who are murderers, who are everything you can imagine, drug lords, drug dealers. They came in from prisons and from mental institutions. And I was elected to move them out, among many other things. And that's what we're doing.
Mr. President,
Ask the Houthis how much this function has. There's none. Pete's doing a great job. Everybody's happy with him. We have the highest recruitment numbers I think they've had in 28 years. No, he's doing a great job. It's just fake news. They just bring up stories. I guess it sounds like disgruntled employees. You know, he was put there to get rid of a lot of bad people, and that's what he's doing. So you don't always have friends when you do that.
should he stop using the app?
I'm going to be there. I hope to be there.
The McLeod course, you're going to open that?
We're opening a fantastic project there, yeah. And I hope I'm going to get to see it.
We look forward to seeing it.
It's going to be great. Thank you very much.
Mr. President, will you comply with the
Mr. President, immigrants, you've ordered a lot of them to leave the country, but travel to Haiti is almost nearly impossible because flights have been suspended. What do you make of that?
Well, I make of the fact that we have to have a safe country. If people are in our country illegally, and if they have records that are very bad in particular, we have to get them out. I was, as you know, elected on the basis that we would have very little crime in our country. They don't want illegal immigrants. We've closed up the border. The border is now the strongest border we've ever had.
These are Haitians who came legally through that Biden-era program, who their communities, even in Texas, conservative voters saying these people should not be forced to leave.
Well, if they came legally, then they're going to be in good shape. Okay?
So you're not going to deport them? There's a Thursday deadline, Mr. Trump.
I look forward to working with you one day, sir. I really do. Both my parents, they work for law enforcement. My mother works for ICE in the Newark office. My father is part of the Thank you. Can you please sign the
What did he do? What did he do that he just like walked? What was that? He just walked away?
Thank you. Can you please sign the
Oh my God.
My mother works for ICE in the Newark office. My father is part of the Thank you. Can you please sign the
Yo, what the fuck? She asked about flights being halted, then asked about legal Haitians in Trump. If they're illegal, it's okay. Yeah, he's wrong. He's wrong. He does not care. He doesn't consider them to be legal. They've made it very clear. The designation is up to the state. Whether you are legal or illegal is entirely up to the state. And that if you are a legal Haitian migrant in the country with temporary protected status, they will revoke your temporary protected status. And then they will say falsely that you are an illegal alien.
Hi there. Thank you.
No, good to see you, sir. How are you? This is my beautiful fiance.
How are you?
They're getting married in 2 weeks.
Any advice for the new? Yeah, make sure you like each other.
Anyway, once again, market is in free fall. U.S. stocks tumble as Trump again rips Federal Reserve Chair. Let's take a look.
Breaking news on Wall Street with stocks tumbling right now. All three indices showing sharp declines today. Let's go live to CNN business and politics correspondent Vanessa Yurkevich. Vanessa, walk us through what's behind this decline.
Well, markets opened rattled this morning because Beijing was essentially putting pressure on their trading partners not to work with the U.S. On essentially not trading with China any longer. And then after that, there was a Truth Social post by President Trump that came out, which sort of rattled markets again. And that's why you're seeing that steep decline. The Dow down 1,100 points now. But you can see the post right there. Where
Wow. Oh God. Wait.
Dow down 1,100 points.
Is that good? Hey, when the business like financial analyst correspondent says, wow, while reading the latest data in real time, is that a sign of good things to come? Is that a sign of the best is yet to come? You're gonna keep winning. You're going to keep winning. You're going to win so much. You're going to say, please, Mr. President, we've won too much. And I'm going to say, no, you're going to win more. Please, Mr. President, we are tired of winning. I'm going to say, no. You're gonna win more.
Now, but you can see the post right there where he's essentially calling on the Federal Reserve to cut rates. This is something that the president really has no power doing. And when he talks about Mr. Too Late, he's talking about the Federal Reserve Chair, Jerome Powell. Over the last week or so, he's really ratcheted up his pressure on the Fed chair, essentially calling for his termination, saying if I could terminate him at some point, I will. The president appointed Jerome Powell in his first term. President Biden re-upped him for his second term. And ultimately, President Trump there, though, saying that he has the power to remove the Fed chair, Jerome Powell. But that is not necessarily the case here. And there's some legal precedent for that says that the president does not have the authority to remove the chair of the Federal Reserve unless there are three sort of different qualifications: inefficiency, neglect of duty, malfeasance of office. So that is why there's so much question about whether or not the president has the power to make this move. But this is why you see markets rattled right now, because the Federal Reserve is an independent body from the government, and it acts sort of as a safety net for the U.S. economy. And when you have the president threatening to remove the Federal Reserve chair or trying to direct the Federal Reserve to make any sort of monetary policy, that rattles investors and traders who see this Federal Reserve Bank as sort of an independent catch-all for potential issues with the economy. And one of those issues, Boris, as you know, that is playing out right now is this global trade war. Many economists believe that this trade war, as it escalates, will increase prices for everyday consumers. And the Federal Reserve really is the sort of counteractive in that, the body that can help try to bring down prices if that were to happen. So traders, investors nervous about this language that they're seeing from the president right now. The next time the Fed will meet is in May, and that is when they will make that policy decision about interest rates. But it is up to the Federal Reserve. It is not up to the President of the United States to make those directives.
We're joined now by Joe Weisenthal. He's the co-host of Bloomberg's Odd Lots podcast. Joe, thanks for being with us. Let's start on how
motherfuckers going on every broadcast except for mine, you know?
Markets have responded to this spat with
He looks like he
Powell.
got older.
You actually posed the question
in the past week. Am I crazy? I feel like we watched him last week. He's getting hit with the Obama ray
of what Trump would get from firing him. Isn't the answer that simply he would get a Fed chair who would do what he says, a more subservient Fed chair?
He might. And that's probably what he has in mind if you were to go through with firing him. But the point that I want to make, and the point that I think maybe markets are reflecting, is, okay, you could imagine Powell being replaced by someone who is quicker to lower rates at signs of volatility or quicker to lower rates at signs of economic slowdown. But the investors and markets, their fear about inflation, their fear about the short-term inflation due to tariffs, they're concerned about, sort of long-term rise in inflation expectations. And there's the risk, and there's the very real possibility that even if you got a Fed chair who was willing to push through, and bear in mind, there's 12 members of the FOMC, so you can't unilaterally push through lower rates. Even if you got a Fed chair who was able to immediately push through lower rates, that might be seen as more inflationary. And then the market might think, okay, well, now we have to raise rates further and harder into the future. And that's how you get the rates at the long end. And those rates at the long end, say a 10-year yield, that's what your mortgage is priced off of, something like that. So even getting in like a true lackey wouldn't necessarily stimulate the economy in perhaps the way that Trump is imagining. What it would do, though, is weaken the expectation that the U.S. has an independent central bank, which is sort of like one of the foundational elements of global macroeconomic policy.
Yeah, I do want to get your thoughts on where we are in the U.S. trade war with China. It seems the Trump administration is still waiting for a call from President Xi that they suggested he should make like a month ago.
I mean, even setting aside China, so obviously about a week after Liberation Day, actually, I think it was exactly a week, they sort of dialed back the tariffs on the non-China world. And they're like, all right, these are going to be down to 10% for 90 days. We're not even getting those deals.
Please call me. Xi, you used to call me on my cell phone. You up? Xi, look at this photo of us together. We used to be together. Xi. Remember when I showed you a video of my granddaughter speaking in fluent Mandarin and you said her eyesight is on the future? At that moment, I realized maybe you were talking about a century of Chinese prosperity. I did not understand it. Xi, please call me. Remember the good times we had together.
Top Xi, we will be the ones to call you first, but that call won't be between the U.S. and China. It will be a call between China and the world. Our message is that we are the adults in the room. We represent stability. Trump will celebrate it as a victory and that China capitulated, but the world will know the truth. Sorry to the average American, but our call will only happen once the pain really sets in. Listen, motherfucker, if you're going to come in here and talk like this, don't literally plagiarize my takes verbatim, okay? I like when you come up with cool new ways of saying I'm actually a secret Turk who wants to be Chinese but will never be Chinese, all that stuff. This is bar for bar what I said, okay? That's crazy.
Trade deal with Japan, which is a longtime trading partner, an ally, that should be a gimme, right? It shouldn't be particularly hard. You could imagine, say, something where Japan agrees to buy, more soybeans or liquid natural gas or something like that. We're not even getting that right now. And the messages that I've seen in various reporting says that's going to be
There are some reports here that the U.S. trying to force their shit food standards on the EU and the negotiations are just dead because it's not going to happen. Dude, I said that. I said that in order to make up for the trade deficit, what are the things that we have at our disposal that we could actually sell to Europe? Meat and poultry. And in order for us to be able to sell meat and poultry into the European markets, they have to lower their food regulation standards, their safety standards. So this is a way to try and force other countries and their own sovereignty, their own internal regulatory agencies. It's not enough that we are up our own federal regulatory agencies. We must ruin other countries' regulatory agencies as well. It is crazy. It is crazy. It is no different functionally than demanding that Barcelona get turned into a parking lot, okay? Demanding that every European city has to make way for large American vehicles, that we will not actually change our safety inspection standards or the engine size of American cars that we produce for the European markets. We will not do that. You will open up your streets. It's insane. It's an insane thing to do. It's an insane thing to demand. It is so ridiculous. Yeah. I wonder why the FDA I wonder why the deal's not going through. Breaking. FDA is planning to end most of its routine food safety inspections, and they're going to localize them. Yeah, they're going to outsource this oversight to state and local authorities.
Slug. So then think that's Japan. And then you have to think, okay, then there's the EU and Korea and everyone else. And all this is before you even get to China. So I think people are looking at the fact that, you know, there is this clock that's ticking, and we're not even getting what should be the easy.
China warns countries not to strike trade deals with the U.S. at its expense. China Ministry of Commerce says appeasing the Trump administration cannot bring peace. China has warned countries seeking exemptions from the United States President Donald Trump tariffs not to strike deals at its expense. Beijing's warnings come as dozens of U.S. trade partners are scrambling to negotiate relief from Trump trade salvos, including steep reciprocal tariffs that have been paused until July. Appeasement cannot bring peace, and compromise will not earn respect, a spokesperson for China Ministry of Commerce said on Monday. Sacrificing others' interests to obtain so-called exemptions for temporary selfish gains is akin to negotiating with a tiger. It ultimately, dude, what is up with the Chinese, man? Everything sounds like a Sun Tzu. Every time I hear from a Chinese netizen, it sounds poetic. Every time I hear from the Chinese foreign ministry, it sounds bar for bar like Sun Tzu. Is this normal? Is this how, I don't get it. Is this just how the language works? What is this? It's all idioms across the board. Sacrificing others' interests to obtain so-called exemptions for temporary selfish gains is akin to negotiating with a tiger. It ultimately leads to failure for both parties and harms everyone involved. While China respects countries' efforts to resolve their trade disputes with the U.S., they should also stand on the side of fairness and justice and on the correct side of history. It is particularly important to emphasize that China firmly opposes any party achieving deals at the expense of Chinese interests. Should such a situation arise, China will not accept it and will resolutely take reciprocal countermeasures. This is one of the first instances where I've seen the Chinese government actually take a threatening stance when it comes to trade negotiations or anything, really. This is a more threatening stance than anything else that I've heard from the Chinese side thus far. Like saying that if you were to cut deals with the Trump administration and ruin your trade relationship with China in the process, because some of those demands are going to be to not work with China, because America's goal here is to literally decouple all global trade from China as a manufacturing hub, or maybe even potentially the secondary markets that China uses, or secondary manufacturing hubs that China uses. And if that's the case, then they will also retaliate. Now, America retaliating against the world in a belligerent manner is one thing. The ministry issued the statement after Bloomberg News last week reported that the Trump administration intends to push countries seeking relief from its tariffs to reduce their trade with China. U.S. officials are discussing plans to pressure trade partners to stop importing excess goods from China and impose duties on imports from specific countries with those close ties to the Asian giant. Yeah. This is America utilizing what remains, or what it thinks it has of its what it thinks it has of its global prominence and influence, which I think to a certain degree America has eroded a lot of that goodwill and a lot of that domination, especially in the last couple of decades. It thinks it can basically bully everybody to also adding tariffs to China. Like, no more Chinese goods entering your markets. Also, you must deregulate your markets. You must deregulate your own. You must no longer have any sovereignty whatsoever, and you must engage in deregulation across the board so that you can allow American goods to flow into your country.
Trade deals are the natural.
By the way, this is something important to understand here is the difference between China and America in this process. China looked to the interest around the globe. They recognized that technology was moving in the direction of batteries and that there was going to be great need for renewable energy in the future, partially because if China were to become anything beyond just the industrial engine, but like a consumer economy or an economy that, or a country that consumes as much as America does, it would collapse climate. It would destroy everything. The world would no longer exist. And therefore, they focused on beefing up their renewable energy sector. In the process, they started making electric vehicles, seeing that there was great appetite for electric vehicles in all of the global markets. But they didn't make electric vehicles on what they think, what the domestic Chinese market's demands were, and with no consideration to what the international markets were looking for. They made electric vehicles, or rather, their regulatory, their own safety measures and their own cars that they were selling domestically were also, they also abide by standards and needs that the international markets had, as opposed to in the United States of America, where our top selling car is an F-150, and that it is not something you can sell to the European markets. You just can't do it. That is the big difference here. China makes products that people want to purchase. America wants to use its domineering influence around the globe to forcibly sell our products to you. That's it. Make better products and people will purchase it. And if you want those products to be affordable, okay, if you want the cost of said products to be competitive with the other country's domestic manufacturing, then subsidize the fuck out of it, which we already do. But don't let those subsidies go back to the pockets of CEOs. But instead, make sure that those subsidies go to your workers. This F-150 Canard again, we make small cars too. I know. Okay, I know we make other types of cars as well. I know. I mean, you have the Ford Fiesta, for example. Counterpoint China bad. Respond to my critique. Potato Enjoyer 420. You are correct. My mistake. I fucked up.
Natural trade deals that you would want to imagine if we were going to sort of build this, global trading bloc excluding China. And so, every day that this goes on, there is damage theoretically, or people perceive there to be damage to the economy that's not easily reversed. It also shows that, the longer it goes on without some sort of reversal, that the market is not, that the White House is not particularly sensitive to market declines for the pace of policy.
Joe Weisenthal, very much appreciate the perspective. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, every 20-year-old had a Ford Fiesta from 1999 to 2013 in Spain. Ford Fiesta discontinued in 2018. And yeah, America's best-selling small cars aren't even small by European standards. That's the other thing.
Thanks for having me.
Well, they clearly...
At this stage, we do not make, at this stage, American manufacturers do not make any small or mid-sized cars at this point. It's all just ginormous tanks.
Don't like the uncertainty that all of this is causing, right? And we're seeing this play out with foreign investors pulling out and more investment in foreign stocks and that kind of thing. So we're going to keep tracking this for sure. Vanessa Yurkevich, thank you so much. And joining us now is Republican Congressman Carlos Jimenez. Congressman, I want to get your take on what's happening with the markets. Should President Trump stop his attacks on the Fed Chair Jerome Powell?
Well, I'm not going to tell the president what to do.
The EV thing is especially true. They're adapting, but not super quickly. Most of the best EVs are still aimed at Chinese middle-class buyers that have chauffeurs, which most European customers don't need. They try to push different battery swap technology that didn't take on as quickly because they massively underestimated the cost. Another funny thing about it is that China also buys a lot of cars. China also will still continue to import a lot of cars, right? And ironically enough, European car manufacturers, as a matter of fact, manufacture different kinds of cars for the Chinese market, because foreign cars in China are obviously more expensive than domestically produced cars. And therefore, most of the people that buy those foreign cars are purchasing more expensive versions of said cars. So they actually have longer versions of the same vehicles that they sell everywhere else. So even Europeans and even Americans, as a matter of fact, when they manufacture for the Chinese market, will manufacture to Chinese needs. They don't want to do that everywhere else for some weird reason. By the middle class and upper middle class statement that the chatter made is correct. A lot of upper middle class Chinese people will purchase longer versions of those cars so that there's more leg room in the back, because they're oftentimes being chauffeured. Like they get those kinds of sedans, like 4-door sedans, for to be driven around in.
Look, I've been on your show before, and I said that this is the result of resetting commerce with the United States of America. And so we've been used to commerce being one way, where people put tariffs on us, but not so much us putting tariffs on them. The president's just trying to reestablish a new reality, a new norm. And when that happens, you're going to have waves, and you're going to have the market go up and down until this all settles out. And so I still have confidence in what the president is doing.
GM had an EU-only brand, I believe, called Opel. You mean Opel? Opel.
He is trying to make commerce and trade fair for America, which has been historically unfair to America. And again, it's going to cause ripples. And so again, I think we just need to write it out.
So there's the issue of the tariff policies, but then there's the separate issue of President
Opel Corsa, Toyota Corona.
Trump bashing the Fed chairman repeatedly. Clearly, he wants him to lower interest rates. That's something that he is not indicated.
I wanted to see if there's any Turks in the chat, but I guess no. Opel fena değil aslında ya. Okay, see, there's some Turks in here. Yes, I grew up in Turkey, where we have Opel, we have Renault, Peugeot, and cars like that. Skoda. Opel is not Turkish law. I know, dude. Opel Corsa, Toyota Corona. Ben çok yaşlandım ondan. 33 yaşında adamım abi. Bizim böyle şakalarımız vardı. Böyle şeyler söylerdik ben büyürken. Bu da eski shitpost. İngiliz köpeği, İngiliz uşağı.
He's going to do right now, and the Fed chair has obviously been speaking out about the trade policy and the impact it can have on the economy. Do you think that the president can fire the Fed chair?
I don't know. And so I guess if he does, I guess we'll figure it out. I mean, there's uncertainty even with your reporter. There is doubt whether he can or he can't. So I really don't know if he can or he can't. If he can, then the Fed has never really been independent, because I'm sure the chairman knows whether the president can fire him or not. And so we'll find that out if it happens. I hope it doesn't get to that. And I hope that they can resolve their differences.
Right, because the law in the book says that the Fed chair can be fired for cause, right? And that's really the big point. And the reason that there's independence, as she laid out, is for investors to know that something's not going to happen just because of a presidential policy.
Also, President Trump is warning countries against cheating to get around his tariffs. But China may be taking steps to interfere with trade talks between the...
Bro, what do you mean? Like, America is telling other countries not to work with China, and then China is saying, hey, don't do that. Oh my God, you guys, my 2-year-old is going to be so jealous. Oh my God. Miss Rachel followed? That's crazy. That's crazy. This is the greatest follow of all time, dude. What's the expectation from China to just like quietly sit by and allow America to destroy global trade? How dare they? How dare they, dude? How dare they? That is not allowed, you see. I can't believe you would want to not allow America to nuke global trade in its entirety for no real reason.
The U.S. and other nations. What is going on? Grady Trimble of Fox Business live at the White House. Hey, Grady.
Hey, good morning, Dana. China says that if the U.S. makes any deals at the expense of China, then it's going to, quote, take countermeasures in a reciprocal manner. And some experts are warning that Beijing could try to strike deals with European countries, for example, that are too good for those countries to refuse at the expense of the United States. But President Trump doesn't seem deterred from his plan, posting on Truth Social about the countries trying to reach agreements with his administration, saying It's good to see that the world knows we are serious, because we are. They must right the wrongs of decades of abuse, but it won't be easy for them. But for those who want the easiest path, come to America and build in America.
I got a readout from Jameson Greer yesterday, and it looks like we're north of 15 now of legitimate, serious offers on the table. The thing I could say you could look for is that when we think a deal's really, really close, then my expectation is the president's going to want to meet with that world leader here in the White House in order to close the deal.
So we will be paying very close attention to which world leaders are coming to the White House in the not too distant future. And here's what the Trump administration is trying to address, or at least cut into: a $300 billion trade deficit with China. Administration officials say despite that number, the U.S. actually has the upper hand.
China imports 11.5 million barrels of oil a day.
I hate to see my goat, Doug Burgum, in this shitty position, having to defend the Trump administration's incompetence. You know, this man sold software to Microsoft and became a billionaire, and look at him now, this beautiful man with his beautiful eyebrows. He has to sit around and defend the dumbest, most incompetent baboon in America.
They import about 25% of the calories they consume every.
Burgomaniacs rise up. Doug Burzum.
Every day. And so when we think about the U.S. and us as being a superpower, we're an energy superpower, we're a food superpower, and China is highly dependent.
And Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, who has been one of the leads in negotiating these new trade deals, he's meeting with his South Korean counterpart this week, I believe, here at the White House. So the wheeling and dealing continues despite these new warnings from China. Dana?
Grady, thank you so much.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe.
冲击不会太大，因为我们的市场，海湾市场没有那么单一。
今天有接到俄罗斯这边的话11万，欧盟的话有5万，中东那边的话有10万。
那我们就开始呢，有一些订单呢不划算的，我们就暂停，就不接了，就开始转向自己的国内市场了。
传统的美国和欧洲市场之外，我们跟50多个国家地区都有业务上的来往。我们还有自己的设计和研发团队，我们手上有21项的专利。那如果客人想找到像我们这样实力强劲的替代者，那这个是他们需要去解决的问题。所以这个问题不是我们，而在于。
目前来说，就是可能关税升级以后，那可能会有点影响，但是我们其实也提早做了准备了，因为我们其实现在平台比较多，对吧？然后比方说像国内的话有18个天猫店，外贸的话像关联的国际站，相当于有30多个平台，其实订单相对来说还是比较趋于稳定。
我们一定要走出来，把这个服装面料演变成服装。跟我们的中国的这一些大型服装厂也好，或者线上的这一些我们叫网红也好，跟他们做一些配套，只能往上升级去做自己的。
当前，国际社 China warns against provocations over Taiwan. Those who play with fire will get burned. The international community. 保护主义. Wait, hold on. The international community is currently facing the impacts of unilateralism, protectionism, and bullying, and hegemonism. Countries in this region are eager to strengthen solidarity and cooperation, jointly safeguard regional stability, and work together to tackle challenges. Against this broad backdrop, the Philippines, in collusion with extraterritorial, is engaging in large-scale military exercises and introducing and deploying strategic and tactical weapons. Such actions undermine regional strategic stability and the prospects for economic growth in the region. They openly stand in opposition to the countries of this region and have already triggered strong resentment and opposition from regional nations. The Taiwan question is purely China's internal affair and lies at the very core of China's core interests. China firmly opposes any country using the Taiwan question as a pretext to strengthen regional military deployments, provoke tension and confrontation, and undermine regional peace and stability. We urge the relevant parties not to provoke on the Taiwan question. Those who play with fire will eventually get burned. And those who play with boats will eventually get splashed with the Chinese Coast Guard. Hassan, please go to China before the war. There is no, that's ridiculous. All right. Funny how America created the capital system and spread it around the world, and then as soon as a big enough competitor themselves comes along, they whinge and moan about it and lash out. Yes, I know Mandarin, chat. That's right. Get ready to learn Chinese, buddy, is what they said. Hassan Reaction is one of the best ones in the React channel.